Welcome in, everyone. We were so glad to have you here for another custom-tailored deep dive. Today, we are tackling a mission that is, it practically guarantees a reaction from people.
Oh, absolutely. You bring up this topic and people immediately get defensive.
They really do, because we're talking about money. Specifically, our mission today is to explore the concept of tithing for the modern Christian.
Right.
And we are drawing on two incredibly powerful teachings for this. We're looking at insights from prominent church leaders Josh Howerton and Craig Groeschel from Life Church.
Two very different communicators, but they align so perfectly on this.
Exactly. We're going to unpack exactly why it is inherently good for a Christian to tithe. We want to completely dismantle the cultural friction around money, and we're going to specifically walk through Craig Groeschel's 5 compelling reasons to put God first in your finances.
What's fascinating here is that when you really analyze the theology and the psychology behind these teachings, tithing isn't actually about money at all.
Yeah, that's the big twist.
It really is.
Yeah.
The sources frame it as a profound test of trust. It's about restructuring your priorities and, honestly, escaping the illusion of greed.
And that distinction is so important for you listening right now. We want to shift the perspective from this dreaded, heavy obligation to a really powerful, life-changing practice of generosity.
And Howard sets this up brilliantly with a story that just, it completely flips our usual view of wealth upside down.
Oh, the Nashville story. I love this one.
It's so good. So he describes being a young pastor in Nashville, and he's driving around with a visiting church planter, and they pass this massive, stunning house on a hill in a neighborhood where, professional athletes and CEOs live.
Right, one of those completely intimidating neighborhoods.
Exactly. And the visiting pastor looks at this mansion, sneers, and says to Howerton, "Sounds like you need to preach a sermon on greed."
Which is such a common human reaction, right?
Hmm?
We look at visible wealth, and we instantly assign a moral failing to it. We just naturally equate having a lot of money with being inherently greedy.
We do.
Hmm.
But Howerton actually knows the guy who lives in that specific house.
Yeah, he knows his actual life, not just the house.
Right. So he counters this visiting pastor by listing off what this wealthy man actually does with his resources. He tells him, this guy has given hundreds of thousands of dollars to missions.
Wow.
He paid for 5 plane tickets so a family in his life group could fly to China to adopt a child. And he deliberately bought that enormous house, specifically so he could host large church events.
And then Howerton delivers that incredible line.
He looks at the visiting pastor and says, "I don't think he's got a greed problem. I think you've got a jealousy problem."
Ouch. I mean, that completely redefines the dividing line.
It really does.
Because culturally, we tend to think the biblical dividing line is between the rich and the poor. But Howerton's core argument is that the true biblical dividing line is actually between the greedy and the generous.
And the scary thing about greed is that it is incredibly sneaky. Jesus actually warns his followers in Luke chapter 12 to watch out and be on guard against all kinds of greed.
Yeah, and Howerton points out that Jesus doesn't use that kind of watch-out warning language for things like murder or theft.
Because nobody accidentally commits murder and then wonders how it happened.
Right. Oops.
Greed operates entirely differently. Greed acts like a blindfold. Its very presence creates the illusion of its absence. When someone is operating out of greed, they are almost always the last person to know it.
Which perfectly explains Howerton's rich family Facebook test.
Oh, this was hilarious.
It's so funny. So to demonstrate how we constantly project greed onto other people, he asked his followers on social media, when you were a kid, what made you think a family was rich?
And the answers are just so nostalgic and telling.
Totally. People said things like ordering Cokes at a restaurant instead of water, having a 2-story house with a pool, eating at Red Lobster.
The ultimate luxury.
Exactly. Having an authentic pair of Doc Martens. Or, my personal favorite, keeping a jar of Grey Poupon mustard in the fridge.
It's a brilliant rhetorical device. Because by using that humor, Howerton disarms our natural defensiveness about our own wallets.
He does.
And it reveals something really profound. Every single answer was about what other people possessed. No one ever self-identifies as the rich, greedy one. Everyone assumes they are just getting by, and the person with the Red Lobster and the Grey Poupon is the one hoarding all the wealth.
Always someone else. So to break out of that illusion, Howerton takes us into the theology of the first.
This is a crucial concept.
If we look at the Old Testament story of Jericho, the Israelites are entering Canaan, and Jericho is the very first city they conquer. And God commands that everything from Jericho, the silver, the gold, the bronze, it all belongs to his treasury. They couldn't keep any of the plunder.
And the reasoning provided in the text is that it was the first city, and the first always belongs to God.
He connects this to the story of Cain and Abel too, right?
He does. And it really highlights the underlying theology here. A lot of people wonder why God accepted Abel's offering but rejected Cain's. We tend to assume it was just about meat versus vegetables.
Right. The farmer versus the shepherd.
But the text specifically notes that Abel brought the firstborn of his flock. Cain, on the other hand, brought an offering in the process of time, meaning eventually, whenever he got around to it. He brought the leftovers.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Howerton argues it's not just that God chose not to accept Cain's offering, it's that God couldn't accept it.
Right, because of his character.
Exactly. Due to his immutability, his unchanging, preeminent nature, God cannot be second. If he is God, he is first. So when humans hold back the first, they run into a serious greed problem.
And Howerton gives a really sharp definition to separate two linked sins here. He says coveting is craving what belongs to God.
Wow.
But greed is keeping what belongs to God.
Keeping what belongs to God. That distinction brings us right into the actual mechanics of tithing, and just as importantly, what these leaders say it is not.
Let's define the terms first, because tithing is a word that carries a lot of baggage for people.
It really does. So the Hebrew word for tithe is mazer, which literally translates to a tenth.
So in this context, tithing is the practice of returning the first 10% of what a person earns back to God.
And biblically, this goes to the storehouse.
Right, and historically, a storehouse was an actual physical location, usually a silo where grain and resources were kept to care for the community and support the religious workers.
And in a modern context, both of our sources translate the storehouse as your local church.
Howerton uses a great analogy here about motivation, because people get confused about why they are giving. He says there is a massive difference between tipping and tithing.
Oh, the restaurant analogy.
Yeah, you tip someone who serves you, like a waiter, but you tithe to show adoration to the one you serve.
That shifts the whole mindset.
The argument is that tithing isn't just throwing a $20 bill in the bucket because you enjoyed the music that morning.
It requires a fundamental shift from viewing yourself as an owner of your money to viewing yourself as a steward or a manager of it.
Which is easy to say, but mathematically, this stewardship concept gets significantly harder the more resources you acquire.
The big math problem. This is where everyone tenses up. Because if someone makes $1,000, a $100 tithe might feel manageable.
Sure.
But if a person has a massive windfall, say they sell a business and bring in $10 million, returning $1 million is a completely different psychological hurdle.
Oh, absolutely.
As Howerton jokes, that makes every butt cheek in the room clench. You suddenly realize all the things you could do with that $1 million. Statistically, both sources note that the more money a person has, the harder it is for them to return that first 10%.
Because as the numbers get bigger, the illusion of ownership gets stronger. And this is exactly why Craig Groeschel is so careful to clear away the bad theology surrounding this practice.
We have to bust some myths here.
Definitely. Before explaining why it is positive, Groeschel explicitly states what tithing is not. First, it is not about earning salvation. It isn't a transactional way to buy your way into heaven.
He also points out it's not about appeasing a guilty conscience. You don't tithe extra because you had a bad week and you want to smooth things over with the big guy upstairs.
And crucially, it is not a slot machine transaction.
Yes, the prosperity gospel stuff.
Groeschel actively calls out manipulative TV preachers who promise that giving $100 will magically yield a $1,000 return. Both sources emphasize that tithing is not a manipulative formula to get rich.
The return is based on the recognition of who God is, not a scheme to build personal wealth.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We're going to transition into the core framework of our deep dive. Craig Groeschel lays out 5 core reasons why he believes tithing is a non-negotiable, beautiful practice for a modern Christian.
Let's dive into reason number 1. It teaches me to put God first.
Groeschel references Deuteronomy 14.23 here.
Right, which states the purpose of tithing is to teach the people always to revere the Lord. It serves as a tangible, regular declaration of priority.
And Groeschel uses a very practical visual with 10 $1 bills to explain this concept of first fruits.
First fruits being an agricultural term, right?
Exactly. Giving the very first part of the harvest before you even know if the rest of the crops will survive. So in his modern analogy, imagine you have $10. You spend $1 on rent. $1 on your car, $1 at Christian Chick-fil-A,
Naturally.
$1 on Netflix, your gym membership, DoorDash, whatever, until you have exactly $1 left. If you give that final leftover dollar to God, it is technically a tenth of what you started with.
But Groeschel argues it is not a tithe.
Because it wasn't first.
It wasn't the priority. It was the leftovers. This is why Howerton suggests that the most practical way to handle this today is to automate it.
Make it the very first thing.
Yeah. He and his wife set up their tithe as the very first automatic withdrawal from their account. Because if a person waits until the end of the month and an Amazon subscribe and save hits their account for some random household item before they've given to their church,
Then God is no longer getting the first.
Exact.
That leads right into Groeschel's second reason. Tithing reminds me that God is my source.
This connects to the bigger picture. Most people operate under the illusion that their employer is their provider and their paycheck is their ultimate security.
And the sources argue that tithing intentionally shatters that illusion.
It's designed to remind you that you are merely managing resources entrusted to you by a creator. Everything comes from God.
Which completely destroys the scarcity mindset. If you recognize you are a steward, you restructure your priorities around trust rather than waiting for the spreadsheet to perfectly align first.
But I know people listening might be thinking, isn't tithing just an ancient Old Testament law? Why are modern Christians even worrying about an agricultural practice from thousands of years ago?
And that is exactly why reason number 3 is so vital. Jesus told me to tithe.
Both Howerton and Groeschel zero in on the exact same scripture here, Matthew 23:23.
It's a direct New Testament affirmation. In this passage, Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, the religious leaders, and they were getting so ridiculously legalistic about tithing that they were measuring out 10% of their mint, dill, and cumin spices.
Tiny little leaves.
Right. And Jesus rebukes them for ignoring justice, mercy, and faithfulness, but he explicitly adds, you should tithe, yes, but don't neglect the more important things.
He doesn't tell them to stop tithing. He tells them to do both.
It's a both-and scenario. Howerton compares it to a dress code. If he says you must wear a shirt and shoes to church, but please don't neglect the pants.
Please wear pants.
He's not saying the shirt isn't important. He's saying do both. Love justice and return the tithe.
That moves us to Groeschel's fourth reason, which tackles the deeply emotional side of money. Tithing breaks my fear and builds my faith.
The cycle of consumption here is fascinating.
Think about how we normally operate. A paycheck arrives. The immediate cultural response is to consume it all, upgrading our lifestyle to match our income.
And because everything is consumed, we experience a lack.
And because we lack, we live in fear. We get trapped in that stressful paycheck-to-paycheck cycle. The argument here is that tithing physically interrupts that cycle.
Because before you can consume, you return that first tenth. It's positioned as an act of trust.
Tying back to Malachi chapter 3, which is the only place in the Bible where God says, test me in this.
Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse and see if I won't throw open the floodgates of heaven. And the personal stories both pastors share about testing this principle are just incredible.
But they're very careful to frame them not as prosperity gospel promises, but as moments that built their foundational trust.
Groeschel tells the story of his very first tithe as a new Christian. He was terrified there wouldn't be enough money left over for him to live on.
So he did what he called an unbiblical tithe at first.
Right. He took 10% of his paycheck to Mardel, a Christian bookstore, and bought cassette tapes and T-shirts, hoping that somehow counted.
Which totally misses the point of the storehouse.
Completely. But once he learned the actual principle, he took the money he had been painstakingly saving to buy himself a car, and he wrote his first real tithe check to his local church.
It was a massive emotional leap of faith for a young guy.
And literally that exact same day, his mother, who lived an incredibly simple life, called him. She said she felt prompted to buy him a car.
A Christian car, as he called it. A Honda Accord.
Yes. And because his mom bought the car, he still had his savings intact. Shortly after that, a friend offered to sell him a rent house for $14,900.
And he was only 19 years old.
He used his car savings for the down payment, and it started this entire lifetime of investing and extreme generosity.
And again, Groeschel emphasizes that tithing doesn't guarantee you a free Honda Accord.
Yeah.
The point is that stepping out in faith breaks the paralysis of fear.
Howerton shared a very similar story from his own life. He and his wife were living on this tiny youth pastor salary in rural Kentucky back in 2006. They ran their budget, and the math just did not work.
The spreadsheet was completely in the red.
But they decided to trust the principle anyway. Howerton wrote God's financial faithfulness at the top of a journal page. And slowly, unexpected things started happening.
His wife got a $200 tutoring job.
They sold some old college textbooks on eBay for $300.
And incredibly, they received a check from the IRS for $730.
Because the previous owners of their condo had overpaid their taxes, couldn't be located, and the law required the refund to be sent to the current residents.
Making the IRS pay you certainly sounds like a minor miracle.
Honestly, yes. But Howerton's point is that those moments build a foundation of faith that gets passed down to the next generation. It proves to you that the fear of scarcity is a liar.
Which brings us to Groeschel's fifth reason, and this might be the most profound one of all. Tithing connects my resources to eternal impact.
This elevates the conversation entirely. It's not just about keeping the church lights on or paying the electric bill.
It's about shifting temporary resources into eternal ministry. Groeschel points out that in his theology there are only two things that live forever:
The souls of people and the Word of God.
And when a person tithes to a healthy storehouse, that money goes directly toward those two things.
Groeschel's church, Life Church, is a staggering example of this. Because of the tithes of their congregation, they partner with 165 local and global missions.
The scope is just massive. They were able to help fund and create the YouVersion Bible app,
Which gives the text away completely for free and is currently installed on over 1 billion devices worldwide. 1 billion.
and the medical impact they have is equally incredible. He highlights their partnership with LifeNet in Africa. It's an organization that trains villagers to treat postpartum hemorrhaging and resuscitate newborns.
Before the training, if a baby stopped breathing in these villages, the survival rate was a tragic 8%.
But with the medical training funded by the church's resources, that survival rate jumped to 94%.
They report over 20,000 moms and babies saved in just 5 years.
When someone participates in this practice, the argument is that they are literally buying oxygen for a baby on the other side of the world.
Or putting a Bible into 1 billion pockets. That is the grander vision they're inviting people into. It's not a guilt trip. It's not a religious tax. It's an incredible privilege.
As Howerton's parents told him when he was young, you'll never be able to afford to tithe until you tithe.
As we wrap up this deep dive, we really want to make something clear to you, the listener. We are fully for tithing. We believe it is fundamentally good for a Christian to tithe.
The underlying spiritual principle is that 90% of your income with God's blessing and purpose can do exponentially more than 100% of your income without it.
It completely defies regular mathematics, but it is the cornerstone of a generous life.
This raises an important question for you listening right now. This entire discussion really comes down to examining how we view our own resources. Are you operating as an owner, clinging tightly to what you have? Or are you operating as a steward, managing it for a much larger eternal purpose?
It is a massive shift in identity. And we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today as you go about the rest of your week.
Let's hear it.
We spent this entire time talking about the principle of the first when it comes to finances and how it reorients your trust. But what would happen if you applied that exact same principle of the first fruits to your time?
Oh, wow.
If giving the first portion of your resources shatters the illusion of financial scarcity, how might dedicating the first uninterrupted 10% of your morning, before the emails, before the notifications, before the rush of the day, completely change your relationship with time itself?
That is a seriously challenging paradigm to consider.
It really is something to think about. Thank you so much for diving deep with us today. We will catch you on the next one.